back in, everybody. Thank you for listening. Gridiron 360, Bill and Dave. We are going to couple our NFL Week 13 recap that we just shot out, or will be up soon, with the segment everybody desires. The good, the bad, and the ugly from the NFL Week 13. Let's start as we always do, Mr. Dave, with the good. Why don't you lead us off with our number one good of the Week 13 in the NFL?
Well, paying a little homage to our two amazing boxers, Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, with the Thrilla in Manila, we start with the war in Baltimore.
I like it.
And that was the 49ers and the Ravens.
Yep.
And we talked about this game in the recap, so we won't rehash every little bit about it. But this was a game a lot of people felt could be a precursor for the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It did not leave you disappointed if you watched it. It was really, one of the things we talked about in the recap that I'll kind of rehash a little bit was the fact that it was great on great. You had a great offense with a very unique game plan to the NFL right now in Baltimore, going against a defense that has put first-round draft pick after first-round draft pick together and not really gotten any results until this year. And now they're humming in the 49ers defense. And they went toe-to-toe. And, then you got the 49ers offense that has been pretty run-balanced, and Garoppolo has been effective. And then you got that Ravens defense that's seen a resurgence in the last 5-6 weeks. Certainly since Marcus Peters has come in, they were atrocious against the pass early on in the year and have really started to figure that out. Got a pass rush, brought in, and Marcus Peters comes in. He's really been a game changer for them. Judon's been awesome.
Just a standout guy in their front.
So those two were kind of evenly matched, but certainly don't get the billing of the Baltimore O versus the San Fran D. And man, it was played out. The stars played like stars. Everything didn't come easy to any of the stars in this game.
For the most part, you got to keep in mind, you think about San Francisco, one of their big stars didn't do much, and that was Kittle.
Sure.
But still, what I loved about this game, it was 20-17 was the final score. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a completely defensive battle, yet it wasn't a completely offensive-sided game.
Yep.
It was a good mix of both. Throughout.
Yep. Yeah. No, when you think back at some of the
big
like games,
that in the NFL.
Absolutely. You think back, like there was big talk about, Baltimore playing the Patriots, and that game didn't quite play out to the level that we thought it would, in that sense. There's been other big games out there. It kind of reminds me a little bit of last year when Kansas City played the Rams, and everybody's like, this is going to be an offensive explosion, and it was. It's kind of living up to what you'd expect to see out of. At this point, we know who the contenders are, and we know who the pretenders are, and we saw two heavyweights, as I used that before, going at it, and it was awesome.
Yeah,
it was
did
just
not
an awesome
disappoint.
game.
And if you look at it, last weekend, the Minnesota Vikings went to Seattle to play the Seahawks. Final score of that game was 37-30 Seattle. And that, to be honest, and those are two teams that historically, especially over the past 3, 4, 5 years, are known more for their defense.
Yep.
Yet a 37-30 score swings way more on the offensive side. Yep. So again, that's why I said this had a good blend of everything. It wasn't for lack of scoring. There was a good amount of scoring. 20-17 is a decent NFL score. It's kind of a score that you would see in the past. Yet there wasn't a lack of offense either, right?
Yep.
It wasn't 10-7. So a good blend. Neither side really kind of trumped the other or got way better than the other, and it was just a competitive game. 20-17. We said it in the recap. Going in, I know how the San Francisco D has played. And I think the line on this was a lot closer in favor of Baltimore than a lot of the lines Baltimore has had. They've had favor for in the past
still-
coming weeks.
It was still
And
5.5. It was
yeah,
still 5.5.
well, yeah, but still they had higher lines in
Yep.
the past several weeks, and they've been able to cover. And this week I was like, wow, I just think Baltimore can cover that 5.5 with what they've been doing. They didn't. Vegas is scary. We say it all the time, but the fact of the matter is that it became a good matchup more so to what I think, certainly if we're pointing towards a potential rematch in the Super Bowl, this spells good things, I think.
The good part about this game at 20-17 is two quarters ended with a tie score, that being the first and third quarter, and no other quarter ended more than a 3-point differential, and that's the way the game ends.
Yeah,
so it was always
every
back and forth, and
snap mattered, right?
Yep, it was. And the other part of it that I really, really liked is it wasn't a lot of sacks in this game. There was only 3 total sacks, and 2 by Baltimore, 1 by San Francisco, which are usually big game-changing plays. There wasn't a lot of those.
Yeah.
And then also they each matched each other for a turnover, so it wasn't like a sloppy game.
Yeah.
There was none of that. And I mean this is like 1984 to me right
Yeah,
here.
right.
You had a 339 yards from the Niners to 283 from the Ravens. I mean, those are passing stats for most games for quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And that is the
That was
total yardage.
total offense.
Yeah. This game was every bit the battle we thought it would be. Lamar Jackson playing in a game where I think it was everybody expected. If there was a game where Lamar Jackson could be controlled, it would be against a number 1 defense like San Francisco. And while I wouldn't use the word controlled, he certainly was slowed down from some of the astronomical stats that he put on, but yet he still did it when it mattered.
That's correct.
He got his yards on the ground. He was effective through the air, still accounted for 2 touchdowns, which in this game, 2 touchdowns was enormous.
Yep.
And yet you still saw, expecting that San Francisco run game for them to have to rely on that to be in this. They did it. They ran the ball. Mostert was, you never know who it is, but he was the lead cow, bell ringer, whatever.
Yeah. Bell cow.
Bell cow, thank you, whatever. And, he went 19 for 146, so he had a really strong game. And I just think it was just interesting all the way around. Like you mentioned, Kittle surprisingly was a little bit held in check. I'm sure he was the focal point. And I would say the equivalency of him being held in check was equivalent to, I think, what San Francisco did with Lamar Jackson. Because, again, we're talking about a guy that's been putting up 400 yards of total offense like it's candy, and he's been doing that on some decent teams. He didn't do it against Baltimore.
Yeah.
Or against San
Against
Francisco.
San Francisco, yeah. Yeah, so the war in Baltimore is our good number 1 of the day. Number 2 good of the day, Kitty has claws. Kitty has claws. Big Red, Andy Dalton gets back under center for the Cincinnati Bengals this weekend as the Bengals welcome the New York Jets, who had been on a little bit of a run as of late. Sam Darnold has put up some games last couple, 3 games that have been more indicative of that first-round pick. The Bengals winless, just atrocious.
Yep. Yeah, I remember they benched Dalton. Interestingly, I think it was the weekend after the trade deadline, so it was a little bit of an ugly, for a guy that's been playing quarterback for a while. Goes with the 4th rounder, Ryan Finley. Finley, as everybody would expect, not just because he's a 4th rounder, but that certainly plays into it, but because the Bengals are just pretty poor, struggles to get it done. They decide to go back to Dalton to get some life in this team. Nobody wants to go 0-16. We got our famous Tampa Bay Buccaneers who held that mantle all by themselves for a while until the Lions came along, and that kitty had no claws.
And then the Browns.
So we just, this is just something that NFL teams don't want to see. It's kind of, in a way, it's like the those Miami Dolphins players that are always popping the champagne when the last undefeated team loses each year, so they can celebrate themselves. Kind of a little bit annoying, but we want to celebrate the fact that they did win. I don't care who they beat.
Right.
It's big. These, everybody talks about all these tanking teams. The one thing tanking teams, whether organizations tank, I won't disagree that happens, meaning when you start trading away your talent like Miami did, but it doesn't help the players on the roster being on a tanking team because it means nobody's going to pick them up. And so I like to see the fight in them. It's nice to see Andy Dalton come back. And realistically, I think Andy Dalton's going to have a job next year. Maybe not a starter, but I would venture he'd be competing for a starting spot because the quarterback ranks, especially these young guys, as we mentioned weeks ago, are starting to fall a little bit out of favor. They're not who we thought they were.
Right.
And that's going to create some space for some guys. You know, Dalton's had a maligned career, but if you put him numbers-wise, he can play with some of the
He's
the
not a
people out
bottom
there.
feeder, really.
No,
and you know, the reality is I saw another article saying that, you know, he hopes that he'll be the starting quarterback in Cincinnati in 2020.
Yeah.
Carlos Dunlap, the on the defense for the Bengals, actually came out and said after this game that they poked the bear when they benched Andy Dalton, that they had poked the bear.
Good.
So, yeah, this is great. I'm happy they're able to get off the schneid. And, you know, honestly, you know, as a Giants fan, the guy that I'm looking for us to get after, especially where we're sitting in the draft order currently and expected, you know.
It's what's that guy's name? He's kind of big.
Chase Young, the game record D-end edge rusher from Ohio State. But I say that because, you know, if they do decide to stick with Dalton, I mean, if they are still in that one slot drafting,
He'd be the guy.
I've heard inclinations that they may try to take him. And understand, you know, Ohio State is hour and a half, 2 hours from Cincinnati. So this is a guy the scouts, especially locally, are probably know,
they know him
very well.
Yep, very well.
So, you know, selfishly as a Giants fan, I hope they go and draft a quarterback if they have that one seed. Who, at this point, maybe they'll win another game and we'll get the one.
And
pick.
you don't know. They could also bring in an outside guy. It's just interesting to see now that the Jets are a disaster, and the Bengals made them pay for it. And I got to say, you know, this is a team. Remember the Bengals team that went out to Seattle in week 1 and lost 21-20 with a last-minute comeback by the Seahawks. They've had a few games. I mean, they've been blown out in some games. And to give Dalton a little bit of slack, their running game, and in particular Joe Mixon, has been awful.
What a disappointment
all year. They just finally bailed on their first-round tackle and Andre Smith out of Alabama. I mean, this guy, they had no weapons. They've been dealing with A.J. Green being out all year, and now I'm assuming I haven't heard anything after he tried to come back and then couldn't. Yeah, so, you know, this guy's really been dealing with a lot of challenges, and the problem is they're still living off the Marv Lewis years, and they let a good, or at times a really good defense just age. I mean, but I will say, you know, you mentioned the Carlos Dunlap. Good on him. Sorry it took so long, but he had 3 tackles for loss and 3 sacks in this game and even had a pass defense. So, I mean, he balled out in the game. You know, again, good for the Bengals.
Yeah, and like we always do, we'll post these up on Facebook. We'll post a little blurb or video that matches one of these. So, but with this, I'll probably have 2 because there's another piece I wanted. If you remember, there was this guy, Jeff Lanham. He owned the Hog Rock Cafe in Cincinnati.
Okay.
And he's a diehard Bengals fan, and after they got off to a slow start, he made this silly bet, if you remember, that he was going to live on the roof of his establishment until they won. Well, 57 days later, he got to sleep in his own bed. I mean, the dude
So he did it.
He did it.
I give him credit.
He said he credited his wife for helping him. He lived on the roof for 2 months, and his wife bought him meals, his laundry, everything. He said he didn't do anything. And last week he finally got to come down and go sleep in his own bed. He said that
Somebody
he
give
even
that
had
guy a hug.
He said he even had Thanksgiving dinner up there because the wind didn't come till Sunday. He had Thanksgiving dinner on the roof. So I'll throw that up there too. But yeah, that's a little bit of funness to go with that.
I give him credit for his dedication.
There you go. All right, where are we going at for the good number 3 of Week 13 in the NFL?
When buffaloes fly.
Well, what?
What is going on in Buffalo?
Buffalo?
How are you 9-3 and still can't get a blip on the radar?
That's a good thing.
Those
buffaloes are flying, but because they're so heavy, they're flying low to the ground and under the radar.
Yeah, the Buffalo Bills.
It's like that Buffalo Wild Wings. You got the buffalo with the wings, although I hate their little, like, catch. Roar! What is that? Who came up with that marketing concept?
Well, this is the good Buffalo.
This is a good Buffalo, and Josh Allen and, John Brown has been a great addition. Their running back, the young running back they drafted, Devin Singletary, is, certainly from the just probably before the midway point of the year until now, continuing to show what he can do for them and doing some good things. And, he does have Frank Gore that takes up maybe a third of the carries in that backfield, sometimes more. But look, Gore has done good things, and he was in our good from last week for breaking the rushing record.
Yep.
Or number 2 or number 3, broke Barry Sanders. So, but that defense, we said it from NFL Podcast 1 when we discussed the Buffalo Bills.
Sure.
That defense is for real. We said they'll end up top 10 for sure, if not top 5. That top 5 is looking real good for them right now. They are a good defense. And you said it, man. I mean, they just don't get talked about, and that's a good thing. Look, they don't put fodder out there. Josh Allen, who is pretty much the term we always like to use, linchpin of that team. Like they have pieces, but he is the team. This guy's not flashy. We talked about in the recap getting the turkey after beating Dallas in celebration on Thanksgiving, and it was something he always wanted to do, and there he was living out his dream. And, but again, they don't put any fodder out here. He's not a guy that you see an Eli face. He doesn't get too high, too low. He doesn't say anything stupid. He doesn't put himself out there saying, anything that the media can grab hold of. Just gets out there and does his job. And, little preview. We're going to have our awards. That's our OUR end of the year awards for college fantasy and NFL. And I know we started building lists, and one of them was Coach of the Year. And one of the names that we have in consideration is Sean McDonough. You gotta, again, not flashy. McDermott. Sorry. I don't know why I said Sean McDermott, Buffalo's head coach. Like, what is this, his third year? He's quietly doing a really good job for this team.
And he's doing it with some interesting transition. I think a couple things I want to note in this game. We talk about Josh Allen a lot, certainly. Their receiver, John Brown, they had their own little version of the receiver to quarterback pass in this game against Dallas. Again, Dallas, listen, they're not playing good football, but the simple fact is they're tough on Thanksgiving. You get the short week. The teams that play the Dallases and the Detroits aren't used to that. Dallas and Detroit players, a lot of them get used to it after a couple years and kind of learn how to do that. But some things I want to note, the Frank Gore story is excellent, but they're clearly starting to have to phase him out as the lead back. And Devin Singletary has slowly but surely started to chip away and do some things with that. Obviously, Josh Allen continues to run the ball really well. Oh, I'm sorry. That wasn't to Josh. The touchdown wasn't to Josh Allen. I apologize.
No, but you're right. He does run the ball. But comparatively to last year when he was a rookie, he ran the ball a lot more. Now it's not like he's just running for his life. He's running.
He's running with a purpose. Yeah, he's running with a purpose. And he's careful. Like, I like it. You'll hear me say it about Lamar Jackson. You'll hear me say it about him. Guys that run the ball, they have to be careful with their bodies. They do that. Josh Allen is also a very big quarterback. So he's kind of a little bit freakishly athletic for his size. But some interesting things for Buffalo that have kind of evolved throughout the year has been, one, I mentioned the emergence of Singletary. How about Cole Beasley kind of starting to get his game going here? The little sneaky freak.
Listen, buddy, I was talking to our friend Justin Hicks because he was asking me about some fantasy lineups for this week, and he was on, he had a receiver conundrum, and it wasn't like he had bad receivers. I think he had like Devontae Parker, John Brown, and Jarvis to choose from. I ended up saying go Jarvis. It was a better play than John Brown, even though I like John Brown, and it ended up a better play with Jarvis, but Parker was the one that really went off. I didn't think that was going to happen so much because of who they were playing, Miami, the defense they were playing, and the fact that, I know Fitzmagic's on a tear, but he can be hot and cold, and Parker really was the only game in town there. So, I mean, it doesn't take much to figure when they rear back to throw, it's probably going to him. For that reason, I thought, the defense would have paid more attention. Long story short, we played Landry. It wasn't the best play, but it wasn't the worst. But I brought up, is Cole Beasley out there on the waiver wire? And he's like, yeah, why? And I'm like, he is going home to Dallas.
Yep.
How did he do?
He had a ho-hum 6 receptions for 110 yards and a touchdown.
Man, that would have been I hate it when I make those calls and it's not like I'm going to move, right? But then somebody doesn't reap the benefit.
Yeah, and again, going back to Singletary's versatility, he went 14 for 63 on the ground, but also then went 3 of 38 through the air with a touchdown. And another last little shot is, you talk about how good this defense is. There was a guy that was getting a lot of chatter last year and ended up moving probably a little further down the draft board as the year ended. Not far, but further than what I think some people expected, but in a good spot. D tackle Ed Oliver. Okay, this kid, he was playing at Houston. People were talking about him. He was, freakishly, he was a really high recruit that actually was kind of a surprise that he went to Houston because he was pretty well sought after. So this guy,
he was, before his final season at Houston, was projected in top 5, maybe potentially one overall.
Number 1 defensive player.
But
at the
he
time.
ended up sitting out the year. I think he got banged up, and then he was able to come back, but decided he was going to sit year.
Stopped.
And with that, there were a few. He might even come back, but there were a few interactions during the Houston season on the sideline involving him that were not so nice.
Right.
I think it was between him and the coach or one of the staff, and it just. Long story short, his draft stock did plummet a bit. He wasn't, so he didn't get drafted in that 1 or top 5 slot.
But when he was drafted, he was kind of felt like maybe a little bit of a steal here. What do we got going? Well, he didn't start the year off with a whole lot of explosion, but at the same time, he plays D tackle, and he's I don't know what his exact weight is, but he's more of an athletic defensive tackle as opposed to a road grader, like a run stopper.
You look at him in his build, he looks more of like an edge rusher.
Yeah, so he has 4 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 2 sacks, 1 pass defense, getting the paws up in the air, and a forced fumble. He's been coming on in the past several weeks. Yeah, they've done well between, I always want to say Tremaine Edmonds, but what's Edmonds?
Tremaine Edmonds.
Tremaine Edmonds. He's got a brother that plays for Pittsburgh. I always get their names confused, but coming out of Virginia Tech, he's the middle linebacker. He was their number 1 draft choice the year before.
Oh no, that's Tre'Davious White. Sorry.
So this is a team that's got some players and some youth on this defense, which
my
could
man
be very,
Shaq Lawson, who was
Shaq
drafted
Lawson
high out of Clemson DN. He has this season really showed up.
Yep. Yeah. So this is a loaded team defensively. So again, the Buffaloes are flying. Maybe that radar they're going to get a shot at the Ravens this week. So they make some noise there, get above the radar on that one. They might get a little rare air. So that concludes our good section of the good, bad, and the ugly. So let's talk about the stink. What's going on with the bad? What do we got? We got.
All right.
Go do it. You got to do it. It's yours.
All right, because I'm a Giants fan, and that's the NFC least. Yeah, look, and we'll put out, I've got a funny little video of these babies crawling around on the basketball court in like a race, and one of them's got like an Eagles helmet, one of them's got a Cowboys helmet, and I've got another thing to share, which is like they're like right now, if you go to Google and type in NFC East, right, before you hit go and just look at what comes up in the searches, 3-4 lines down is NFC East memes. And if you click on that, they are just roasting my New York Giants NFC East conference. It's just friggin' ugly. And I guess the worst thing about it is, I mean, this is a division in the NFL that notoriously is one of the best and toughest. I got to be honest. My Giants, I think, have a lot to do with this problem. We are just so bad that, because typically growing up, all the teams were tough. All four: Redskins, Giants, Eagles, Cowboys. Okay, none of them were bottom feeders. There might be some middling, and then one or two of them are at the top end. But over the past several years, with declines like my New York Giants and being a bottom feeder, just now like the Redskins as well, who have been for a little while now. And then on top of that, the two teams at the top of the division, it's like nobody wants to take the crown.
We'll just understand this. There's going to be 3 games left in the season for that division after this week plays out. And at this point, none of them will be able to be 500. I mean, It's just that simple. Now, I will say this, though.
Remember a few years ago, a little more than a few. God, time flies. 2007, I think it was 2007, was the season that we go in the wild card at 8-8,
snuck in and
won
the whole thing,
all the way, and ended up beating the best team of all time.
It ain't happening. Everybody knew that Giants had a good defense that year. But I'll say this: of all the 4 teams there, to me at this point, the only one with a potential arrow pointing up right now is the Giants. They're going to have to make some moves, and sounds like the coach might be part of that process. But they do have one of the most special running backs in the league, in Saquon Barkley. It appears they have potential at their quarterback position with Daniel Jones. He's shown some flashes of being good. He's still a rookie, but he's doing well. He's going to sit out this week. But other than that, I mean, you've got a Washington team that just drafted a quarterback that doesn't know which end is up. He's begging his offensive line to work. They got an injury-plagued running game. The receivers are not particularly explosive, and their defense is non-existent, with the only air quotes talent they have is expensive and not living up to a third of their contract. And then you've got the Dallas Cowboys, and we've already talked about them at length. So they're in a situation where they're going to have cap issues because they're going to have to pay 2 more guys big money if they want to keep them, and I don't know that they can. And yet still they're not winning with those guys. So So it is a nightmare.
Really, and look,
it's just a bad division.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. It's not just that it's a bad division. Whether these NFC East teams are in a game where they're playing each other or they're playing a team not in the division, that team that represents the NFC East, it's just ugly football on both sides of the ball. That's the fact of the matter. And even if you start to see signs of life from one of these teams, a la Zeke starting games looking real good, then stupid crap happens. Yeah. And they don't use them as much. Right? It's just ugly. It's not NFL football. It's not good NFL. It's not good watchable NFL football, and it's very frustrating. Not just if you're watching them, but if you're a fantasy football person and have guys involved. But most of all, if you're a fan of any of these teams, it is extremely frustrating.
Yep.
So let's move on to the bad number 2 of the week. And I got a question, Dave. Mm-hmm. Are you getting splinters?
I am if I'm a quarterback for a few teams.
And why is that?
Because I've been benched.
Oh.
So this has happened already this year. We've already had a few. Earlier in the year, some notable names. Marcus Mariota has been benched.
Mariota.
And there's been a resurgence of Tannehill, which we mentioned, who could be a good one on this list. Yeah, maybe a little further down the line.
Yeah, maybe.
We've seen... certainly about 2 weeks ago, Derek Carr was benched for the neck, and he came out and had another stinker. He did not get benched in the last game, but
again,
it was ugly.
Played like crap.
Yeah, and it was a huge game for them. So this week we see,
It's like the guy they finally had a chance under Carr to potentially make a run at a postseason. Maybe not win the division, but they did have a chance to win the division. But even just to slide into a wild card, and it's like once they had that presented to them, it wasn't like they embraced it and wanted to reach and grasp for the top of the mountain.
They crumbled.
They crapped themselves.
Yep, they crumbled. So the new ones of this week, we already mentioned Ryan Finley. I don't know that I really consider that a huge surprise,
he's a rook,
but it just shows that there's still not decisions made about where this team's going to go
a
as
lot
far
of
as
teams
Cincinnati.
obviously seem to not be patient.
Yeah, and again, think about a couple weeks ago, you had I saw this thing on there 2 weeks ago. Dak Prescott was ready to get $40 million, and Mitch Trubisky wasn't going to play in the league next year. And we see how that's kind of changed. So some of the guys we've seen, Nick Foles, $88 million. That was a 3-year deal, I believe. He got.
He's been hurt
Yep.
since like game 1, 2 of the year.
Yeah. So
the
mustache comes
Minshew.
in. Yeah, he comes in, plays
Everybody's
well the first
stoked
couple
about
games,
him.
loves him. Mustache Jesus, and then kind of
And then everybody's like, oh, he's not very good.
Yep, and now they're still in the playoff hunt, so they go and slap Foles in there, and it was Foley moly. It was ugly.
Yeah, it
So
was
Nick
bad.
Foles with that big contract is getting benched. Initial word out of this is that they are still going to retain his salary for next year because they take a pretty significant hit if they cut him.
The expectation, I think, this week is that you were going to see Minshew roll out there.
Yeah,
though.
yeah, oh yeah, no, that's it. He's benched. One we saw that we kind of picked up on it more so than I did really early on this year, but definitely I'm seeing it. I saw it probably halfway down the line. Is Phillip Rivers is going to get benched for Tyrod Taylor. That pretty much probably spells the end of an era because Tyrod Taylor is certainly not, I don't think, the future of that team.
He's had opportunities, and I wouldn't even say he's been good.
Yeah,
he's been maybe average, is being polite.
Yeah, so I mean, you're seeing these guys, and we may see a little bit more of this. Kind of on the flip side, just as a little side note, is Eli, who was benched, who was part of that Phillip Rivers class. That was a very unique draft situation, as he was actually taken by San Diego, that being Eli Manning, and then the Giants picked him up and they flip-flopped their trades. Who else did you get in that? Did you get any?
No, it was straight up. But they picked one, they picked Eli, we picked two, and we picked Rivers, and the trade happened right then there.
Yeah. So anyway, Rivers has now been sat down. So
They probably got some draft picks or money. I can't.
yeah, there is this is going to go on right now, and I think this is part of this. And even I said it. It's kind of amazing at the beginning of the year where I was like, "There's really 20 quarterbacks." When we were talking about, like, I think it was about fantasy. We're talking about that are because of all these young guys progressing, and then we had 4 or 5 weeks ago they're not who we thought they were. Reality's starting to hit on some of these guys, and now here we are seeing the aging crop go down, some of the youth not being served properly, and here we are. So what do we got for our last bad?
The riverboat has been sunk.
Yeah.
Sunk? Is that a word? Sunk?
Yeah,
The riverboat sinks as the Carolina Panthers part ways with head coach Riverboat Ron Rivera. This is bad, and I don't say it bad. Look, I'll be honest. If we don't stick, we being the Giants, don't stick with Shermer, I'd love to have him. Look, he's not the greatest coach, but right now it's almost like the quarterback situation. It's like, it's hit and miss with some of these guys at head coaching positions. And yes, he does take risks, but nowadays that doesn't seem to be that outlandish. Because, where you'd see him take risks would be on, like, fourth down, going for it on fourth down. And that seems to be much more the norm nowadays, depending on the yardage and situation. But still, that's why they called him the riverboat gambler Ron Rivera. I just don't think he did that bad of a job. I think he did the best he could with the hand that he was dealt. The whole Cam Newton situation, from when he was drafted there to now has been an ongoing saga of drama in one way or another, and it was always, Cam Newton always had the spotlight on him, whether it was good or bad. We've talked since early in the year. This is now the Christian McCaffrey show. It's not the Cam Newton show. And Cam being hurt and being out.
Look,
I just don't think he's that bad of a coach compared to what's out there and what some of the other teams have done. And I don't think they have a very good defense. They've got a few pieces, but, Kuechly, if he's the best guy on their defense, sans their rookie Brian Burns at DM from Florida State, if he's one of the best pieces on defense, he's great. He's been around a while. He's no young.
He's getting up there.
Anymore.
He's lost some of that speed. And the game style has changed a little bit too. That matters. But I'll say this: he's one of 2 head coaches current that have been fired in the last 20 years that have gone 15-1 between him and Mike McCarthy, who was fired last year from the Packers. And on top of that, this guy is 3 years removed from a Super Bowl appearance.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about a guy
Maybe
4. Okay. So we're not talking about a guy that has really just
been sucky his whole time there.
You can point to issues that he's had on this team.
I don't think they've ended the season at the bottom of the NFC South at any point under his tenure.
No, Tampa Bay helps that, but yeah.
Yes, but still,
but still
look,
not.
That's a division that
I think he would have been
for
fired.
several years. Like, it was a different team every year winning that division.
Yeah, unlike here's the thing: is he in a way is kind of like a Marv Lewis situation in this fact, not in all facts, but in this fact that he's been with the team a long time. Sometimes your message dies. Now the difference is,
the fan,
to me,
they're tired of it. They want to see if something else, new shiny toy, can make things better.
Right. They need a change in the, I guess, just in the messaging. But the difference to me is Marv Lewis repeatedly sent very talented teams that did the same exact thing. If they ever got to the playoffs, which was rare, they'd lose.
Yep.
So this guy was Ron Rivera has proven that if you build a roster for him, he can turn them into champions. And understand something. Ron Rivera, what I like about him is this guy was on the 85 Bears. He's seen dominant teams before.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a linebacker for them.
Defensive-minded guy.
And understand, he was a backup. He was a good backup, but he wasn't getting ahead of Otis Wilson and Samurai Mike and Wilbur Marshall. But so this guy kind of came in, and he wasn't really a splashy hire in one sense. Like, he was a Bears defensive coordinator, and the Bears dumped him. I think that was under Lovie Smith. And then he went and coordinated for the Chargers, and he was coordinator, right? Or was he a head coach? No, he was a coordinator of the Chargers, right?
Yeah.
And he tore it up there, and then they gave him a shot, and now you're talking about, I think is he the most tenured coach behind Belichick at this point? I think he is. Was the second most tenured coach. I think so.
I'd have to think about it, but it's pretty damn close.
Yeah,
he's definitely
he's
in the
9
top
years,
5
8,
out of
9
32
years.
teams.
Yeah, so again, to me, it's bad only because I think you got a good coach. Sometimes you see these coaches and they're like, I'm just going to take a year off and let this play out. But this is a guy, as soon as he says he wants a head coaching job, which
he already has.
He said he wants.
He already came out and said, I'm ready to be coaching.
He'll be employed next year,
yep.
No doubt.
And look, we'll send these things out there. Maybe a couple with each, and this one we'll have a couple. I'll send something about the firing. But another piece came out, and it was on Bleacher Report, and it's the headline was "It's all about the family." And so what it says in the little piece, it shows a picture of Ron Rivera hugging his wife, and it says Ron Rivera says he was criticized by some for having his wife and daughter around the Panthers so much, but he told the players he was trying to set an example of how to treat your family.
It's a good man.
That is a good man. That's a guy I'd have coaching for me. I'd love it if that happens.
Yeah,
so.
he's the real deal. Whoever gets him is going to be very, very lucky next year when they get to that. So that takes us to our fun segment.
Ugly.
UGLY, you ain't got no alibi. Bill, tell me, what's ugly?
Well, I bet I get suspended.
Bet? How much?
I don't know. How much was it that was bet?
I would like to know.
And we are talking about Arizona Cardinals cornerback Josh Shaw. Tell us the story, Dave, because I'm just so flabbergasted that in this day and age.
So understand something. We've got two things going on right now. Well, three things. The NFL has always been really scared about this FanDuel fantasy betting because it was
now legal. Sports gambling is legal.
That's the second thing is that their sports gambling got legal, and now it's starting to get legal in multiple states. And the belief is within a couple of years it could be legal in every single state with their players. Now the final step is they have a team moving to Las Vegas. And that, they said, was always the reason why they didn't put a team there, was the fear of this. Well, and everybody said, well, look, it's not really happening. And now
it wasn't. It wasn't.
No, there was no.
I think when the sports gambling was legalized, that was a huge concern.
Yes.
Is players or people involved with the team betting on or for or against their own team, having or even referees potentially being paid off to have some sort of hand in the outcome of the game.
Let's be honest, one of the best players ever to play in baseball is being
Correct.
Kept out of the Hall of Fame strictly for that.
Yeah,
and
Mr.
he
Pete
never
Rose.
bet on his own team is the understanding of that.
So when it was a worry, but now we're
we thought we were past
year,
it. Yeah, we thought we were past it.
And nothing really big has come up until this Haas clown.
So I didn't read all the detail into the story because it wasn't of that much interest to me. It's more of an ugly and a laughing ugly. But Mr. Shaw decided to bet, and he bet on football, which is against the rules, of course. The best part of this whole story is that he actually bet a game of the Cardinals. And the best part of that is his own team. Now, it never said who he bet for, but the best part of it is he still lost. So the I bet I get suspended goes to Josh Shaw.
And he is suspended indefinitely, so you won't see him the rest of this year. And I'd be surprised if you see him ever again, because let's be honest, this guy is not like, whoa, that guy's awesome. Yeah. He's just a piece that could probably be passed over.
So let's go to number two. And when we talk about number two, I'm gonna shoot another little thing that's definitely worth a listen. Bill and I just enjoyed it a few minutes ago. And our number two is, wait, what did you say? And we're talking about announcers and things you hear verbally on the radio. I will point to something before I turn this over to Bill. If you get a chance to listen to a radio interview, look up Jerry Jones in Dallas.
105.3 The Fan in Dallas. Type it, Google Jerry Jones 105.3.
Yeah, it's about 20 minutes, but the first 2 minutes are the whole thing you need. You can enjoy that. But speaking of what did they say, what's our ugly what did they say?
Okay, this is just, when are people going to learn, especially in today's society and in the NFL, where the race card is, people are just
super sensitive.
Yeah, where people are just waiting for you to say just the littlest thing that's wrong, that's got a racial tone, and then it's just boom. Well, this is it. There is a broadcaster. By the name of Tim Ryan. He's
is the radio caster.
He's the radio color analyst for the 49ers, and he was on.
No pun intended.
Yeah. He was on a Bay Area sports talk show on Monday. It was Monday of this week. Yeah, it was Monday of this week. And as we know, one of our goods, the war in Baltimore. So it was
awesome
the Niners
game. Big talk.
and Baltimore were playing.
Yep.
And he made a comment in reference to Lamar Jackson, who is a black man. And he said he's exceptional at faking handoffs because the dark skin color that he has pretty much masks a dark football, which makes his faking handoff so exceptional? Basically saying because the football is a dark brown leather and he is a black-skinned, dark-skinned black man, you can't see. Mic drop. I mean, are you serious? And keep in mind, this guy is not black either. Obviously, he's some. I mean, he looks like almost some pretty boy white. He almost looks like Cliff Kingsbury in this picture with his ball cap and his friggin' shade. I mean, what are we doing? Are you serious, bro? Like, how do you have a job? How did you get to this level?
Wait a minute. So you're saying you don't believe that this is the true in-depth analysis of this great war in Baltimore?
I mean, holy Christmas. Now, if he said something like, well, they wear dark unis and that those black uniforms, when they wear all blacks, if he does a ball fake and puts the ball like on his back thigh where it might get massive, you could get away. What are you doing, you idiot? You know that's not the way. We've had other black quarterbacks. Look at
Rant coming.
I'm not gonna rant on it. I just can't. Why would you just an idiot? Unless it was just an absolute diarrhea of the mouth, or he was stoned, and even then, it's like I just don't understand people. I don't. Why? And here's the other thing. I mean, the 49ers, since the run with Harbaugh, have been in the friggin' weeds. They're a potential Super Bowl contender.
Yep.
It's like, dude, what in the world? And that was a good game. You didn't get blown out by this team that's projected to be there.
And if that's why your team would lose or have a I guess a challenge from them, then you're really not that good. But anyway, the whole point is stupidity still reigns. It's everywhere. Thankfully, they just went and just I don't think they dumped him yet, but last I heard they suspended him. I don't imagine he's coming back. What makes me laugh the most is, of all towns this is going to happen in, safe place, center of the world, safe spaces in San Francisco. But anyway,
listen,
the guy's a moron, and you know what? Lamar Jackson's really good at ball fakes because
he's a good football player.
Yeah,
okay,
that's why.
He doesn't do all he does because the color of the ball matches the color of his skin. Therefore, he can fake handoffs better than anyone else. It's absolute nonsense. And here's another thing. I mean, this is a guy. He's a color analyst, for the team. But I mean, so he's part of the team. I mean, the not him, which he probably had to do, but the organization also had to extend apologies to the Ravens for this dumb, and that you're on pace to at where we are in the season and where San Francisco stands. You don't need a distraction, period. Okay, you certainly don't need it from somebody that's not on the field. You moron.
Yep.
Get out of here.
Yeah, just stupid commentary.
On to the ugly number
So we keep
3.
doing it. What's the number 3?
Swag from the kitchen.
Ooh.
What? We got some. What? We got some swag in the kitchen. We got some swag in the kitchen. What does that mean?
Well, it's not kitchen with a T. It's kitchens.
Kitchens. That's
the
right.
Thing that will never die.
Freddie Kitchens, and it was a bad or an ugly last week when we were talking all things Garrett and the lady
Jason and Miles.
Yeah, and the lady talking about Miles, or how she was wearing the Miles Garrett Woolley, the female owner of the team. I mean, just unbelievable. So here we go. Okay. Freddie Kitchens, this guy, as if you haven't dug yourself enough of a hole. I don't care if they're on a little bit of a tear and still have potential to make the playoffs. What are you doing? So Freddie Kitchens last week, in response pretty much to their match, they had the rematch with Pittsburgh, this past weekend, and it was in response to the first
None of the
matchup.
players involved in the altercation played, including the quarterback that wasn't suspended.
Correct. But it was in regarding to that matchup where we had the whole chaos of Myles Garrett swinging the helmet in the fight at the end of the Browns-Pittsburgh game from a few weeks back. Yes?
Yes.
So Freddie Kitchens comes out this week with a statement that, or not with a statement, I'm sorry. He follows in suit with this goofball lady owner who comes off wearing the Myles Garrett hat. And this week, Freddie Kitchens is seen wearing a T-shirt that said, Pittsburgh started it. Dude, just go, coach. Just go, coach.
I got this.
I mean, did
just,
the lady
no,
owner
don't,
did
just
the lady
start
owner
coaching.
put him up to this, saying, "Hey, you got to couple what I did with the hat." Because if that's the case, and I could see it, I mean, this is, no offense. I'm not trying to be sexist, but that lady has no business being involved in the NFL based on.
Well, I think isn't she the owner's wife?
Yes, she's the owner's wife.
Okay. Well, I don't know.
But
If she has,
didn't
if
the
she's
owner
involved- I
die?
don't know.
Yeah, I think the owner died. I think she's.
Is she the actual
Yes.
running the team
Yes.
principal? Oh, okay.
Dude, go coach football. Your team isn't that good, and you were supposed to be Super Bowl contenders this year. You certainly have a lot of pieces on both sides of the ball. I mean, you already got this talk about OBJ saying that he wants to stay a Brown, but then you see these other reports. Well, I may not want to be there next year.
Whatever happens next year will happen.
I mean, dude, go coach football.
But this is the problem: is this team could not handle the idea that they could be successful, which is why they started out the year so horribly. So that was a distraction for them, and it crippled them. Then the Baker Mayfield gets testy. Odell Beckham pouts. They couldn't handle that distraction, and they didn't do well. Then they started winning a little bit. They won a game, and Myles Garrett can't control his emotions for whatever reason. I'm trying to let that die because there's nothing that's going to prove it one way or the other. There's just opinion on it. And so they allow that distraction to happen. And yet the team that can afford the least amount of distractions, which is the Cleveland Browns right now, creates their own distraction over that scenario 2 weeks in a row.
The head coach.
Well, and
the
the
guy
owner,
that's supposed to be leading the team on the field.
just morons. And so,
aren't you supposed to be preaching to your team? Let's avoid that nonsense and focus on what's going on in the field. I mean, what kind of
no. You know what this
example
is?
are you setting?
This is look over there and don't pay attention to the fact that I'm a god awful head coach. That's what it is. It's distraction, and this is it's disgraceful. And this is why we have it, because there's ugly is. You know what? It's funny when we come up with these. We spend the least amount of time trying to find the ugly because it slaps you in the face.
Oh, it jumps off the page.
And that's sad, but we do. It's sad.
All right. So that runs through the good, the bad, and the ugly. Oh, but we have our one new weekly award that we're going into week 3 of adding to this segment, and that is the Celly of the Week Award.
The Celli.
Celli, Celli. This is the celebration of the week. Now, no drunken celebrations this week.
Alcohol's not the in thing
There
this week.
were some celebrations, but nothing that was like too outlandish or hilarious or ugly or great that we were standing out until the newer edition.
And so what do we have? We wait till Monday night. I'm a little starved. I haven't seen my cellies. I'm like, what's going on? Nothing really.
This gets it, baby. You
Nothing
guys want to
really
look
good.
at this one that we post. This gets it.
Oh, and the video we post is awesome because it shows how truly well they choreographed this dance.
Ronnie, Bobby, Ricky, Mike, Ralph, and Johnny too. Oh, and Russ. And Russ.
Yeah.
Or not so much.
This was awesome. Sans the potential MVP, Russell Wilson. He had a little struggle getting in the groove, but led by their receiver.
Before you go into that, I mean, he had trouble. You know, he's married to a really hot chick in Sierra that's also like she's a singer,
she's an
music
entertainer.
singer. You'd think he might living with this beautiful woman, might have danced with her.
Plus, he's athletic.
Might have some sort of like rhythm
groove.
Yeah. I love you, Russ.
So anyway, I'm blanking right now on the song. What was the song? It's The newer edition.
It's what was it? I'll find it.
I keep wanting to say like Candy Girl, but that's not
Yeah,
it.
it was,
No,
wasn't it?
No. It's a love song. But anyway, here's the deal. So you're gonna see this. It was a really simple dance, but it was well choreographed, minus Russell Wilson trying to jump into the middle of it. But even better was, if it isn't love, that's what it is. If it isn't love. So for all of you non-millennials, Billy's got to play.
Keep going.
So we are going to put a video out that plays the music and then cuts into it, and you will see how perfectly they choreograph this dance. Seahawks, I got to admit, I was never a big boasting guy. The only guy that ever made me laugh prior to these new celebrations was Chad Johnson. Actually, Ocho Cinco could do a few funny ones.
The Ocho.
But most of them pretty dumb, man. I got to admit, since they've allowed them to do it and spend a little time choreographing it, some of these have been pretty good. And this one, and I got to admit, I knew who New Edition was.
Absolutely.
They're
dude.
big-
I
they're big
love
time.
New Edition.
Big time.
And I loved it when they broke up. I like Bell Biv DeVoe. I like Ralph Tresvant. I like Johnny Gill.
Yep.
I like them all. Bobby Brown.
Yep.
So,
So
I had his album, man.
the funny part is those guys were probably in diapers when New Edition was playing.
Exactly.
So-
But it was definitely worthy of
Yeah.
the Selly of the Week.
Yeah,
So
it was
check it
awesome.
out. That'll wrap up the recap. NFL Week 13, good, bad, and the ugly segment. We'll get it out there. Take a look at our post. Enjoy, have fun, make comments. We'll dice this sucker up. We got to talk briefly, I think, a little bit about Week 14 preview, but we'll see you next time as always.
On the gridiron.
Have a fabulous day.